site, onedistrictallstudents.com, and you've read my most recent post addressing the elephant, you probably have an idea of what I think it might take to start rebuilding some trust between what is the largely Sausalito community and largely Marin City community that has now assigned itself to the Willow Creek, unfortunately, versus base and MLK debate. There are racist undertones to this, and we can't deny that. If we deny that conversation, we deny the experiences of generations of people that are looking at this problem through those eyes that I don't have. I grew up in Alabama. I grew up in a school that didn't feel weird to me until one of my black soccer teammate friends came over to my house and I was like, oh shit, there are rebel flags hanging up in my house. Didn't feel wrong to me at the time, but that's just how I grew up. So when I come here and I move here with my family, and I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited about sending my kid to a great public school experience, and then I hear about kids getting the raw end of the deal, and I dig into it and I'm like, wow, this is systemic and generational and wrong, and nobody's owning it. Nobody's saying, yeah, no, that was our bad, we made a couple of mistakes along the way, we're trying to do better. I hear, no, it's cool, we'll take you back to your old campus with a new name and new people in charge. And that kind of pisses me off, right? There are test scores that say, generically speaking, people at Willow Creek score better. Well, yeah, I see those test scores too. But if you dig under them a little bit, poor black kids do better at base at MLK than poor black kids at Willow Creek. And if our largest student body percentage is poor black kids, we can't shut down the program that is doing right by them. Especially when they've been fighting uphill the last couple years while a couple of Willow Creek Aligned members have been recusing themselves on the board for financial and legal reasons. And they're finally getting some movement going. Now is not the time to shut them down.
I think the question was, how do we restore Marin City's trust in the school district? And it's interesting to me that that is not a Bayside, MLK, or Willow Creek question. Half of Marin City is freaking out about the school district's current budget and plan to take hundreds of thousands, approaching $1 million, out of Willow Creek. Let's be clear, they don't trust the school board. Half of Marin City parents, over half, including a large number of low-income minority students. It happens to be a little bit smaller African American, it's larger Hispanic, larger other races. The other half of parents in Marin City are at Bayside MLK. And by the way, the low-income black students at Bayside MLK are not doing okay. They are doing just a few points better on standardized test scores. And that's a recent phenomenon. They are not doing okay. It is not acceptable what that population and the rest of the low-income, disadvantaged population is experiencing at either school. They both suck for that population. There's some progress being made, but it's unacceptable. The only way we're going to build trust over time is to get results. But there's some early baby steps. We do need to engage our community, play sports together, do social things together. But as a board, we need to engage our community in a friendly way where people feel listened to and then they see the actions put into place. We can't have the revolving door of leadership. You never build trust when you're restarting every year or 2 years. So this board has to recruit strong leadership, engage the community, and I really believe bring everybody together under one tent and focus on our disadvantaged population. They're not doing okay anywhere.
Thanks. So I totally agree. I think with actually everything, and I'm particularly concerned about how we really encourage people to be able to communicate with the school board, and how we really start building this dialogue so we can move to run school. Because I think it's essential that people feel heard. I think it's essential that they know that the school district cares, and I also agree that you have to show results, that we have to be there, that we have to move ahead. And one of those areas is in the community school, is pulling people together, providing the services, and making the school a place where people come, they feel respected, they feel heard. But I do think that we have to deal with the just incredible sense of distance between Marin City and Sausalito, and work toward it and have discussions and really, have real discussions about what's going on and how people feel. We have had a distinguished school that was kind of decimated as a result of funding for the charter school, and we need to look at that and we need to figure out how we can avoid doing that in the future. That we are starting to move ahead, we are starting to get better results, we're focusing on these incredibly important problems, and we need to have the parents, we need to have people engaged. And I agree, I think the board meetings are a difficult place to have that. But I have never seen a board that doesn't have committee meetings, that doesn't have outreach to the community, that doesn't speak to people and get people engaged in this discussion, whether it's through user-centered design or some other method to say, what is it, what will address your issues? How can we make this work? How can you feel heard? How can the needs of your children be met? So I think that's going to be an incredibly important step.
Yeah, I think rebuilding trust takes a couple things. One is you've got to be honest and you've got to be open. And I think part of that is being honest about the history and how that impacts people's view of things. And we've got to look and see, where did we do right by people and where did we not? And what did we do to move forward? And I think part of the challenge is when I talk to families from Marin City, they either go to Willow Creek or go to Bayside, and many families that really want to look forward, what they care about is a great education for their kids. And they care about an honest communication about where we are, what's working and what's not working. And one of the most important things to do is be transparent and be honest. And what you don't want to do is use partial pieces of data to try to create colored stories that move people in the wrong direction. Let me give you a simple example. Nathan states the majority of the kids X, Y, and Z. It is really important to understand how kids are performing and to look at the data and understand it. When we talk about low-income African American students and how they're performing, and you compare schools' performance, you're talking about 24 students at Willow Creek Academy and 31 students at Bayside MLK. You're a math guy. That's not stats. You don't want to make general understanding off of numbers that aren't predictable. They can't tell you the truth of what's going on. You've got to step back and look at things and understand where things are working and where things are not working. And it's using kind of false information to try to paint a picture that's what's broken this district apart, and we've got to stop doing it.
Thanks, Kurt.
The revolving mic. So how do you build trust? You build it by stop stigmatizing Marin City. Okay, you build it by halting those false stories about the people who live in Marin City, unincorporated Marin City. I was at a gathering a few weeks back, and then there was a lady there who had just moved to Sausalito on the houseboats from San Francisco, and she goes on to spew all of these stories about what she's heard about Marin City. And it began to just resonate with me as to the stories that people hear. Can anything good come out of Marin City? Yes, it can. Lots of good comes out of Marin City. You're seeing some right up here. Josh, who lives in Marin City, our families, we've had many events together. Jen, I'm sorry, we haven't broke bread together in Marin City, but we're neighbors. There's lots of good that comes out of Marin City. The moment that people can begin to listen to the voices of the parents within our school districts, that feel that they are disenfranchised is when you will begin to build trust. When we decided that we were going to deficit spend so that we can put some bodies in our classrooms, our parents began to feel trusted. Okay, now you're going to start looking out for our kids. We are not. You can go back to any other meetings. You will never hear us say that we are taking over $1 million away from any classroom. That's a misnomer, because that agreement hasn't even been done yet. That can keeps being kicked down the road. So our last superintendent, who wanted to begin having those talks with Willow Creek and it never happened, that can is kicked down the road. We would never take money from kids.
You're the next question. Yes. Okay, so while we have that on the topic, it's a question that we have here. So if everybody can hear me, the district has been running a deficit of $500,000 per year for several years. The current approved budget proposes to resolve this deficit by cutting as much as $1 million from Willow Creek's $4 million budget. Do you think that's the right decision?
Okay. Just in case anybody didn't hear that, we've been running a deficit of just over $500,000 for a couple of years now. The question on the table is whether pulling $1 million out of Willow Creek's $4 million budget is the right way to fix that. And in short answer, no. How we got to that $1 million that's in question is the question. When you have a budget that kids are used to and you've created continuity and stability, which Ida pointed out is necessary, especially at the kids in Marin City that have had their campus kicked over to a different city and they've been put in portable classrooms for a while and they've had programs taken away and programs given back. Continuity and stability matters. So if the question on the table is, do we pull $1 million from Willow Creek, forcing a huge disruption to that student audience? No, that's terrible. I'm curious how we got to this $1 million mark. Somebody was talking to me today and they said, we're spending $500,000 deficit, and if we literally just moved Willow Creek to the state guaranteed minimum for charters, which is like $8,500-ish per student, then we would reclaim that $1 million. And I believe that's this $1 million question mark. You can't just yank it all back at once because it came incrementally over a decade, right? Like the way our charter is structured is that Willow Creek is an independent charter. There is also a dependent charter, which is a different structure model. Dependent charter reports to the district board. District board gets a superintendent, superintendent hires the principal and makes some hiring decisions at that school. So there's more control at the district board. Dependent charters get district money well above and beyond that state minimum. Independent charters, like we have, they get their own board. They make their own hiring decisions. They make their own governance policies. And typically, they operate without asking for a whole bunch of money above and beyond that state required minimum. When we operate way outside of those norms to the tune of $1 million, it raises eyebrows. It's a question mark that I still have, and no, I don't think pulling $1 million out of the classroom is right, ever. My question is, how did we get to this weird $1 million question mark in the first place?
Thank you, Nathan.
With respect, there's some more homework to do there. Dependent charters and independent charters don't necessarily vary on how they're funded. They vary on where the governing board is, whether it's the elected district board or a separate board. The funding laws around charters are the funding laws around charters. And there is a lot of history in this district around how the charters evolved from a very small, relatively insignificant part of the district to the majority of the district. And most of the way money flows is dictated by the state, dependent or independent. That's just a fact. It's gotten even more so the case when the state increased funding for schools. Because it really didn't give our district more money, because we have high property taxes. But it mandated we give the charter more money. And so as the charter's grown and the state funding formula has grown, by law, we're doing what we need to do there. Now there is a level of discretion above and beyond that because we have so much money in our property taxes. And that's where that argument has been. As I said earlier, let's end that argument and bring everybody together. But we're not there yet. So this district budget, which has been adopted for 2 years, we have to adopt a 3-year plan every time we do a budget. 3 years ago, we had $1.5 million and change in our reserves. Last year and this year, we've been deficit spending by about $500,000. Our reserves at the end of this year will be basically at the minimum allowed by law. A change has to come next year. The district has adopted a budget. And Ida, you voted for this for 2 years. That does take that money out of the classrooms at Willow Creek. I have voted for that under heavy protest. I have used the phrase kicking the can, not in that it hasn't been decided, but that it can be undone. And it needs to be undone. This budget can be balanced outside of the classroom. We have debt service, district overhead, adjustments we can make without
Thanks,
cutting
Thomas.
at either school.
Thanks. So again, I'm just confused about why you haven't been able to take those steps in the last 2 years, Josh. But I agree. I think that we need to look at all kinds of ways to balance this so it doesn't come out of the classroom. And I suspect that the budget that was passed doesn't say come out of the classroom. I think it says to go back to the legal level for funding a charter school. But I think both, certainly Ida and I agree that that's not, we don't think that going to that basic level is the right solution. I think that there are a lot of other solutions on the table. I know Tarina, our interim superintendent, has been working really hard to look at administrative costs, to see where we can cut, to use those funds effectively, and that I think is going to be a huge issue. I think we need to look at savings in both schools, and there's and I think we also need to look at ways to increase funding, whether it's through grants, whether it's through fundraising, whether it's through new and creative solutions, whether it's renting out some of the space for after-school activities. There are any number of things that would help to resolve this gap, and I think part of the issue is coming up with creativity and not seeing this as an either-or, us versus them solution. That we really need to focus on the needs of the kids, and again, as we come together and build more collaborations, I think we can significantly reduce our costs because we do have smaller classes. We have this incredible opportunity too. We have amazing in-kind support for the schools, and I think we can have more. I mean, there is tremendous support for our schools, and we just need, and I think we need to build on that and continue the work to improve and sustain the schools.
I think to fix the problems that we have in this district and make this board function, I think you do need people with experience. And I think, Nathan, you clearly identified that need. You could not have defined how a charter school within a district is funded less correctly. So a charter school is funded like any other public school in the district. And students should be provided funding based on need, not based on school. A district board by state law has the obligation to provide resources to both schools based on need, irrespectful of whether they are a public charter, traditional public school, dependent, independent. Governance, very different. Financing, all schools are public schools. It's just that simple. But it's important to start with that common understanding in order to then step away from that argument and just focus on what do the kids need and how do we serve those kids. And that's when you do look at overhead, which we have not cut and literally have been told by the state, by the county, by everyone, cut your overhead. Stop spending money on debt that you could pay off. We literally could have solved these problems if we had a thoughtful board that was working all in one direction to care for all kids.
So that financial cliff that we have been talking about, our kids have been dangling off of that for a long time. And so I make no remorse in voting for a budget that puts some bodies within the school site. But with that said, Kurt, I agree with you. Absolutely. We definitely need to come to the table of brotherhood and figure out where do we put that money where the most needs are, and how does that work? And so it's one of the reasons why our former superintendent of schools, Will McCoy, kept knocking on the door to have those conversations that never did happen. And so we are where we are right now. But it doesn't mean that we have to stay where we are right now. You know, certainly, I feel very grateful to the people in this district, because a lot of you are property owners, and your taxes do go towards our schools, and I am grateful for your investment in that, because our kids are worth the investment. Many of us, I am a product of the public school. I went to public school right here. City Hall was my elementary. Down by the dog park, that was my junior high. I've said many times that, I love snickerdoodle cookies today because I used to bake them in the hills of Sausalito with my little white friend Katie. And we didn't have these issues. We wasn't talking about monies and budgets and all. Investment matters. Investing in our kids matter. How do we get to a balanced budget? It's going to take time, energy, and lots of discussions of how we do it, and some of it has already been spoken upon already.
Thanks, Ika.
I want to talk about Bonnie's comment about Josh and why he's been on the board and not been able to do this. Josh has asked for 2 years to look at creative options, to look at that $1.3 million sitting in the bank account, gathering dust, not doing anything. Why could we not take that money, pay down the debt service? He has asked for that because, unfortunately, he has not had anyone else willing to look at other solutions to write that budget. That's why he hasn't been able to do it, just to let you know. I know you haven't been to many board meetings and don't have a whole lot of experience with the issues. So it's a fact. Sorry. So I don't believe that that's the right solution, to take $1 million out of the budget of Willow Creek Academy. I believe that we've talked tonight about a number of solutions that can be explored that make sure that both classrooms have the funding that they need to support the students, especially those with the highest need. Now, we are a well-funded district. We have excess property taxes. And the reason that we have that money above the state minimum is because we have such a high group of students that have more need. And that money, as Kurt pointed out, is to be distributed irrespective of school to the students that have the most need. So legal minimum is the funding that I think you meant to say, Nathan, when you talked about the funding for charter schools. It's the legal minimum is what you're suggesting goes back.
No.
But that legal minimum does not consider a large high-need population that needs to be served in a school. So just correcting some facts.
Okay, for our next question, what specific steps would you take? Can everybody hear me? I'm sorry. What specific steps would you take to close the achievement gap at both schools, and how would you handle the differentiated learning needs?
So closing the achievement gap and handling differentiated learning needs is a massive task. Not only does our district struggle with it at both schools, as the question states, our county struggles with it, our state struggles with it, our country struggles with it. It's not an easy thing to solve. That being said, there are examples of where people have moved the needle. And in almost every example I've seen, you have consistency of leadership. You bring in strong leadership, you keep them around, and you have them focus on programs targeting the population most in need. Neither school has been able to do that. Beyond that, you have to keep that focus there And when you're in this district structure where, as you hear tonight, there's a lot of arguing over history and fact and money and so forth and so on, your focus naturally leaves there. And it makes it hard to recruit good leadership and hard to keep good leadership. So by bringing everybody together, we're in a better position to recruit that leadership, create the focus, and over a multi-year journey, move the needle. I've been a part of programs like Marin Promise that's very focused on this. I've been beating the community school drum for as soon as I got on the school board. There are programs at work, but it takes a board to come together with a shared vision that people who are applying for superintendent or principal job will trust that the board is behind them and that can act in a way where there's unanimity on moving things forward. We've really been lacking that. It's not for lack of individual effort, but it's just the fact that the way these elections have gone, the way things have gone, we've elected boards that are dysfunctional. And so I really hope that people will start to see the differences between candidates and bring candidates onto the board together that are already aligned. Because you hear a lot of, I agree, I agree, I agree. But the reality is when you get down into the details, we don't agree. And that's why we've chosen to run as slates and team up, because there are specific ways to get to this shared goal. But if you keep fighting about how to get there, you never get there.
So I totally agree with the importance of leadership. And I think that that's one of the things that board members need to do and board leadership needs to do, is to pull together that leadership and that vision for the schools. And one thing that has worked consistently well for students of color and in disenfranchised communities have been community schools. And that's where you provide the wraparound, the support services for the kids in the district and for their parents so that they can come together, that the parents see this as a place where the school is an important place, where they get the support that they need and that the kids get the support they need. We have one of the other things I think and I think we need to move forward. I mean, it is just an essential piece for both Willow Creek and for Marin City to strengthen the community and to strengthen the opportunities. And I honestly don't think it's going to cost more money because we already have those resources. It's a question of how do we coordinate them. So one opportunity, for example, at the Hannah Project, which runs a fabulous summer program, academic summer program for kids in Marin City and the kids come throughout, operated a great program. Performing Stars, which also operates an amazing program and has camperships and resources for kids. This year, the problem was that some of those camperships came in the middle of the academic season for the Hannah Project during the summer. And so the kids then had to leave their academics, have the great opportunity of doing the campership, but then come back and they've lost ground. And we know that summertime, when you've lost that ground, it's really hard to come back and move forward. So this year, they sat down and they talked about it. And they worked out a schedule. So kids get both the academics and the campership and the resources. And it's those kinds of things. It's not going to cost us any more money, but it's going to provide those kids an amazing summer. Because kids in Marin City and low-income communities don't necessarily have those opportunities to go to summer camp, to go to Europe, to do all those wonderful things that we want our kids to experience. So I think those kind of building those community services, those community resources, and making the school the hub is going to make a huge difference in that achievement gap.